This is the first episode of a new series that I'm starting called Do I Still Believe? I'm going to revisit my musical catalog that expands well over 20 years, and I'm going to try to answer a simple question. Not does this sound good or would I write this today, but do I still believe what I said? Something I used to always hear the older folks say is keep living. And one of the many lessons I've learned from that statement is that as you live, you keep growing, and as you grow, your beliefs change. And it's especially important to continue to revisit those beliefs. As many of you know, I began a deconstruction journey around 2018. And what started as me exploring what I believed to know about God, it soon became a journey into exploring who I am. And in today's first episode, we're going to tackle a song that I wrote called Underrated.
Being underrated is overrated. Being underrated is overrated. Right where I'm supposed to be. I'm right where I am known and needed.
And this is one of those moments where I still believe the core of what I said in this song, but I'm learning what living it out actually requires. So recently I had a show in Atlanta, Georgia, and I performed this song. If you're subscribed to my weekly newsletter, I share some context behind creating my set list for the show. And I had to make a decision. I only wanted to perform songs that I actually believed in present day. Some songs feel like timestamps. Underrated feels like a mirror. And it wasn't showing me the person I was when I wrote it. It showed me the person that I was trying to become. You know what I'm saying?
I was following the crowd, hoping they might notice. Contentment is a gift. I had to fight for it. I thought to stand alone as the man was the standard. And kinda thank God for blessings I couldn't handle.
So when I wrote Underrated, in hindsight, my discernment was very emotional. And what I didn't know was that I was not emotionally healthy. And that's not a good place to determine if you're hearing God. See, I had been taught either implicitly or explicitly that God's presence would always bring clarity, that these opportunities were confirmation, and that peace meant you were on the right path. So during my deconstruction, that emotional feedback loop, it broke. That uncertainty felt like absence, but I really just had God in the wrong place. See, I was of the belief that because it was a good idea, that automatically meant it was going to work. And I had to learn, like, yo, that's not even how life works. This mindset turns God into someone that we hold accountable for outcomes that he never promised.
Why is achievement tied to affirmation? Why do we feel as if we have to make it? We be counting on these tangible antidotes like we found a hope, then hold God accountable. That is not the goal.
I said earlier that my emotions were very immature. I was constantly checking for God to tell me that I was good with each step that I took. If the opportunity worked out, that means God is pleased. If the opportunity fell through, that means I must have missed something. Maybe I didn't hear him as clear as I thought I did. It was like every outcome became a report card. Every outcome and result reflected if I was doing it right and if God was happy with me. And at a deeper point, if I was even accepted and loved by God. That is a very abusive mentality to take into a supernatural relationship. And that thinking didn't come from dust. It was woven into how I was raised. My household wasn't necessarily affectionate, but love, worth, and value was measured by performance. And that love is conditional on getting it right. Essentially, I was recreating a childhood dynamic, and I needed constant validation to know that I was doing okay. And when the project didn't hit, I would question everything. My discernment, my calling, my worth. But what I didn't know was that I tied this idea of always being on the right path and being a good person worthy of love to results that I could not control. And that was really, really hard. And so what did I learn on my journey of deconstructing my faith and essentially my life? The biggest thing was that this concept of faith, this concept of belief, it began to show up as personal responsibility. I had to learn what I was able to control. I am not responsible for the outcomes. I am not God. I can't move heaven and earth. I cannot manipulate God to get him to move heaven and earth. So I ended up assuming personal responsibility. The emotional God chasing, the outcome measuring, the let me decode this sign approach to faith. I was over it. So then you begin to control the controllables. What does that look like? I started taking my mental health seriously. I started going to therapy. I abandoned this idea of finding balance and in turn explored what it looked like for me to create rhythm with my life, my work, my relationships. I started eating better. I started prioritizing physical activity, focusing on honest and healthy relationships that did not require performance. I started respecting my limits instead of spiritualizing my burnout. And wouldn't you believe it, that's where I started to see God. It was not predicated on emotional highs, not mystical certainty, not even in outcomes. It was really just the fact that I decided to take care of myself. Again, the things that I could control, my effort, my discipline, my integrity, my wellness. And that in turn took all the pressure off of the outcome. I was no longer waiting on God to affirm my path, and the goal was to show up as whole as I could on whatever path I was on. That changed everything. So when that happened, a concept like underrated started making even more sense.
I used to ask God for doors to open. He'd do it, then he'd ask, oh, that's all you wanted? See, the prize wasn't denied, which made it even tougher. He gave me what I wanted, it still wasn't enough. He wanted me to make my own path, that was different. I had to learn greater ain't necessarily bigger. The allure of more is in my core. Because it wasn't mine, my mind had to endure. Thought success was universal, mine should look like theirs. Theirs was in a ride, mine was up the stairs.
Every day I have to choose to take the stairs. It is growing deep instead of growing wide. It is not being led by trends. It is prioritizing my rhythm and not grind culture that tells me to burn out. So I still believe what I said in this song, but looking back, I realized when I wrote it, I didn't understand how much capacity it would take to live it out. So I had to redefine what success means. Success does not always come with confirmation. God is not gonna always say good job. Sometimes success is simply being intentional, taking care of yourself, being present, and not necessarily because you know where it's leading you to. But in many cases, it's the most honest thing you can do. And I've built a life that does not crumble when outcomes don't match expectations. The old belief was about the answer, and the current belief is about the process. So do I still believe that being underrated is overrated? Yes. I just hadn't lived long enough to understand what that concept was asking of me. It's very easy to wear that concept like a badge of honor. It's very easy to use that as an excuse for why you're not satisfied, where really you have an opportunity to create a path that measures your own success. And I feel like this song was the perfect place to start with this series. My name is Armand Wake Up, and if I'm all the way honest, I'm still on the stairs.